All right. This is written by DHH. It's we once more have no full-time managers at 37 Signals. This is interesting. After experimenting with a number of management roles over the last 7 years, 37 Signals, that's the company behind Basecamp and Hey, is back to its original configuration. None. That's interesting. Most companies grow into more complex organizations with more levels of middle management between the top and the people actually doing the implementation and the work. So this is interesting. We once more have no full-time managers whose sole function is to organize or direct the work of others. Everyone doing management here does so on the side, next to their primary work as an individual contributor. Okay, that sounds like a double-edged sword. So on one hand, you've got the managers understand the work that they're doing and the work that their employees are doing. On the flip side, the managers probably aren't focusing on becoming really good managers and protecting the teams that they're managing. But I guess maybe in some organizations, maybe that's not necessary. I know in like my company, our managers do a lot to make sure that the rest of the organization stays informed and we don't get a bunch of flack from the rest of the company as far as like things that don't matter to us, essentially things that have been solved, things that like explaining how things are going to work in another environment, kind of coaching and mentoring us, like that all comes from a manager. So if you're not full time with that, I have doubts that you can do a good job. So I don't know, we'll keep reading, including Jason and I, and it works. Oh, so DHH is still writing code. Interesting. That's not to say that there's no managerial work at 37 Signals. We still do yearly performance reviews, have onboarding duties for new colleagues, schedule on-call coverage, and supervise junior work. But instead of gathering all those responsibilities with a few full-time managers, we've distributed the load among the senior staff. This is again a double-edged sword. I think it's probably good from the fact that like if you're like I mean I could not see myself, at least in the near future, maybe someday down the road, I could not see myself being a full-time manager. I don't think that's something that I could do. I think I would go the senior development, like senior staff engineer sort of a like path. That would be where I would head. I don't think I would hop over to the management track. So this idea that you can do both is actually kind of interesting to me, that you could both be a contributor and be a manager. But the flip side of that is, do you end up doing two people's jobs instead of just one? Does your workload scale and double, or do you end up having like half and half? And when you do half and half, can you do either side justice is an interesting question, I guess I have. And how do you not neglect one when you do the other? This incentivizes a minimalist approach to management. I do think that's an interesting idea. I think if a manager doesn't feel useful, I think you can get into scenarios where they make problems essentially that other people have to solve, and it'll slow you down. But that shouldn't be the role of a good manager. A good manager should be that servant leader position, to where they unlock the team going further and getting more done, rather than create more busy work to get more visibility into what the team is doing. It should be fairly obvious what the team is doing to the manager. Instead of lining up a recruiting schedule of weekly one-on-ones, we drive status updates and check-ins by automated questions. What? Automated questions. Get your A's to your Q's. Automatically ask your team questions on a regular basis. Wrap up. Draft reports. What will you be working on this week? Oh, so you just write a small little report instead of have a stand up. I don't know how I feel about that. I don't know. Jury's still out on that. Instead of assigning 5, 6, 7 reports to a single person, we make every lead and principal programmer responsible for one mentee. With this distribution, there's no longer a fixed 40 hours for managerial duties to expand into. And so we dodge Parkinson's law. What is this? Parkinson's law can refer to either the two observations published in 1955 and the essay The Economist. Work expands as to fill the time available for its completion. The number of workers within public administration tends to grow regardless of the amount of the work to be done. Oh, okay. So I do know this. Like, people find work to do, essentially. So makes sense. Because everyone we have doing a small share of the management would usually rather be back to their own work as quickly as possible. Oh, so you're essentially disincentivizing management duties. Interesting. So they essentially they want people to go back to engineering, and they don't want people doing management things. Some weeks that means the managerial overhead is literally zero, as everyone is just busy getting their work done and nobody needs anything. You can't do that in a traditional setup. It's impossible for a full-time manager to scale their inventions down to 0 hours per week and still feel like they're doing their job. Now I'm sure that this arrangement would be difficult to maintain at a grand scale. When you're dealing with hundreds or thousands of employees, you're naturally going to yearn for more structure and hierarchy. But that's not the case at around 60 people, which is where we are. Okay, I can buy that. It's also not the case when you hire, mentor, and promote managers of one. People with both the competence and drive to set their own agenda and follow it autonomously. People who don't need weekly one-on-ones with a manager to stay on track. People who thrive on long stretches of uninterrupted time. So here's one question I have. If you've got senior devs doing this, and they're managers of one per se, are they compensated in the same way a managerial person would be? Or are they compensated the same way a regular staff engineer would be, with this extra managerial duty that they probably don't want on top of it? It's interesting. I don't know if I just feel like this might not work long term, but maybe it will. I just think there's probably some pitfalls here that aren't being voiced here, I think, is what I'm kind of getting at. That's the kind of people we seek to hire and develop at 37 Signals. And I find that it's easier to steer the development when someone's primary manager is also their professional superior. You're likely to learn faster and frankly respect that person more. This is a good call out. This is a good thought, actually, that there's a natural respect ladder that will be built that might not happen in other companies, especially like big enterprise companies where your manager for a development team might not even have ever written any software. So that's interesting. This is the old Steve Jobs quip about they knew how to manage, but they didn't know how to do anything. That followed his experience hiring professional managers rather than letting the best individual contributors do the management. I think whoever is managing you should probably definitely have an idea about how to do the work of the people they're managing. So if you're a programming manager, you probably should have experience writing code. It's just how it is. I wouldn't go that far. I do think there are plenty of professional managers who've had solid experience doing things, but I think the general principle holds. If they're not better at doing things than people they're managing, yeah. But even so, it's still a trade-off. I found that the hardest part of the managerial burden to distribute broadly is dealing with the conflict and poor performance. There are a lot of senior staff willing to be able to help mentor and manage juniors and peers who are on solid trajectory and acting as managers of one. It's much smaller group who welcomes dealing with reports who can't keep up or repeatedly gets lost. So here's one interesting thing I want to know. So how does DHH, so say you've got 60 people and half those people are managers of one and half those people are the mentees. So you got the mentor, manager of one, and the mentees. So 30 and 30, that means DHH, when he's steering the company, has 30 direct reports, essentially, which sounds actually like quite a bit. I mean, I guess that's probably like the top end of what you can handle, but that sounds like a lot. I don't know. That's just, I don't know. Not sure if I buy it, but maybe it's working for them. So for this to work, you have to realize the limitations of the managerless arrangement. There's got to be someone else in the organization who can direct or even take over when an employee needs a strong, repeated, redirecting feedback. What a euphemism. That's the deal. Those cases will have to bubble up to the top. Let's see, and having 30 people bubbling up that stuff. I don't know. If you hire good people, maybe you don't have to worry about it. But is it really so bad? If cases of poor performance keep bubbling up, there's a fundamental problem somewhere in the process anyway. Yeah, I guess that's kind of what I was getting at with like you need to hire the right people. And that can usually be only definitively addressed by the top. Are we not hiring the right people? Are we unclear about our expectations? Are we too different in our feedbacks? These are root cause problems that require root cause reparations. I guess I agree. I guess this is a fair point. When all this works, the result is astounding. Small teams of highly competent managers of one can progress at an unbelievable pace. Left to just do their job, they get it done, and are in turn rewarded for their precious job satisfaction of really making a direct personal difference. There's nothing better than shipping quickly alongside peers you respect highly. After 20 plus years of running a company like this, I can tell you that I no longer have any interest in working any other way. Spending a couple of years with more traditional structure was a wonderful experience because it cemented this fact. We're going to make this company work without full-time managers or die trying. I would like to know on average what the employees think. I would like to know, like, what do the individual contributors on the teams think? What do those managers of one think? I'd like to know, on average, does this lead to more satisfaction or does it lead to more burnout in the more senior engineers? Are they being tapped on the shoulder all the time by juniors? And is that a problem? Or do they actually get more time to code and decompress from their managerial duties? I'd really like to know how this works. Not just from the top, but how it works all the way through. But I think this is a super interesting idea and a super interesting concept and more manageable than, like, say, a flat structure company where there's like the CEO and just a bunch of developers. I don't think that's going to work either. So, but I liked this article. If you liked this, please like the video or subscribe to the channel. If you have any comments on this, if you have an experience working at a company like this and want to leave some feedback on how that went, please do so in the comments. If you have opinions about it, comment. We record these every Monday at 8 p.m. Pacific Standard Time over on Twitch. The link is in the description for that. Alrighty, everybody have a good one.